The human fleet Endurance moved slowly through the dark edges of space, where few ships dared to travel. The Outer Rim was dangerous territory, filled with pirates and raiders who attacked anyone foolish enough to venture too far from civilized space. But humans had never been afraid of dangerous places. Communications Officer Lisa Martinez sat at her station, monitoring the usual background noise of space when something caught her attention. At first, it sounded like static, but as she adjusted the frequencies, she realized it was much more than that. Her training kicked in immediately as she recognized the universal distress pattern that all spacefaring species used when in mortal danger. "Captain Brooks, you need to hear this right now," Martinez called out urgently, her fingers working quickly across the glowing console to clean up the signal. The transmission was breaking up badly, probably damaged equipment or interference from whatever was attacking the source. Captain Jake Brooks had been studying star charts at his command station when he heard the urgency in Martinez's voice. He was a veteran of countless space battles, and his weathered face showed the stress of command. As he walked toward the communications station, every eye on the bridge followed him. The bridge crew was diverse, with humans working alongside several alien species who had joined the fleet as navigators, engineers, and specialists. The gathered crew listened in tense silence as the broken message played through the speakers. The voice on the other end was clearly terrified, speaking in the rapid, clipped tones of someone trying to get vital information out before it was too late. "This is Medical Station Theta 7 of the Vortani Collective. ... We are under heavy attack by Gulag raiders. Multiple civilian transports trapped in our sector. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Requesting immediate assistance from any allied vessels in range." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Everyone knew what that meant. Either the station's communications had been destroyed, or the station itself was gone. Lieutenant Commander Mike Davis, the fleet's tactical officer, was already pulling up long-range sensor data on his screens. His fingers moved quickly as he analyzed the readings, and his expression grew more serious with each passing second. "Sir, I'm detecting 12 Gulag warships in attack formation around their position. Long-range scans show 3 large civilian transports that appear to be disabled and drifting." The Altarian navigator, Veltar, shifted nervously in his seat. His species was known for their excellent navigation skills, but they were also naturally cautious. "Captain Brooks, the Gulag have a terrible reputation throughout this sector. They are known for their complete ruthlessness toward civilian populations. They take slaves and destroy everything else. We have only 4 ships against their entire raiding fleet." Brooks stared at the tactical display showing the enemy positions. The numbers were clearly against them. 12 enemy warships versus their small patrol fleet was not good odds by any military calculation. His jaw tightened as he processed the information, knowing that every second of delay meant more innocent lives lost. The nearest Allied fleet was conducting operations in a completely different sector, at least 6 hours away at maximum speed. Even if they sent an immediate distress call, help would arrive far too late to save anyone. The Vortani were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced medical technology and humanitarian work. They had no military vessels, and relied on others for protection. "Set course for the distress signal. All ships, maximum speed," Brooks commanded, without hesitation. As the Endurance and her 3 escort ships raced through space at maximum speed, the crew prepared for what they all knew would be a desperate battle. The journey to the crisis zone took 2 tense hours, during which every human aboard checked their equipment and reviewed emergency procedures. The alien crew members moved quietly through the corridors, their expressions showing deep concern about what lay ahead. When they finally arrived at the edge of the combat zone, the full horror of the situation became visible on their screens. The Vortani medical station, once a gleaming symbol of peaceful scientific research, now hung like a broken toy in the darkness of space. Multiple hull breaches scarred its surface, and debris floated around it like a cloud of metal fragments. Emergency lights flickered weakly through the tears in its hull, suggesting that some sections still had power and possibly survivors trapped inside. The sight that made everyone's blood run cold was the 3 massive civilian transport ships, drifting helplessly in a dense asteroid field. These were not military vessels, but converted cargo haulers designed to carry families, medical personnel, and refugees to safety. Their engines were dark, meaning they had no power for navigation or escape. The asteroid field that surrounded them was both a blessing and a curse. While the floating rocks provided some cover from enemy fire, they also made escape nearly impossible for the damaged ships. Chief Engineer Tom Wilson worked frantically at his station, running complete diagnostic checks on all 4 human vessels. His screens showed green lights across the board as he verified that every system was operating at peak efficiency. All ships reporting ready for combat, Captain. Hull integrity is at maximum strength. All weapon systems are fully charged and ready to fire, he reported with the calm professionalism that marked all human engineers. Wilson's team had spent the journey reinforcing critical systems and preparing for the kind of brutal close-quarters combat that humans were becoming famous for throughout the galaxy. They had redirected power from non-essential systems to strengthen the structural integrity fields and boost the shield generators to their absolute limits. The Centaurian science officer, Kethelin, studied the tactical readouts with growing alarm. His large eyes darted between different displays as he calculated probabilities and analyzed enemy positions. His species was known for their logical approach to problem solving, but logic painted a very dark picture of their chances. Captain, conventional military wisdom strongly suggests that we should maintain a safe distance and wait for reinforcements to arrive. The mathematical odds of success are extremely low. 12 enemy warships against our 4 vessels represents overwhelming superior numbers. Before Captain Brooks could respond, Commander Rachel Foster stepped forward. She was the fleet's tactical coordinator, responsible for planning battle strategies and coordinating attacks between multiple ships. Her voice was steady and determined as she interrupted the science officer. The odds don't matter when innocent. Civilians are dying out there. Every minute we wait means more families torn apart by these raiders. She turned to face Brooks directly, her expression serious but confident. What's the plan, sir? How do we take down 12 enemy ships Brooks looked at the tactical display one more time, studying the positions of enemy vessels and the layout of the asteroid field. A slow smile spread across his weathered face, the kind of expression that had made human commanders famous throughout hostile regions of space. We use what makes us human. We do what other species think is impossible. He turned to his tactical officer. Davis, I want you to prepare ramming protocols for all ships. Load them into the navigation computers as backup plans. Then he addressed his chief engineer. Wilson, I need emergency structural reinforcement on all forward sections immediately. Redirect power from life support if necessary. We're going to need every bit of hull strength we can get. The alien crew members throughout the bridge exchanged worried glances with each other. They had served alongside humans long enough to recognize when their human colleagues were about to attempt something that their own species would consider completely suicidal. The battle began in a way that no alien species had ever seen before. Instead of maintaining a safe distance and exchanging long-range fire like civilized warfare demanded, the Endurance suddenly accelerated directly into the deadly asteroid field. The massive space rocks that most species would consider impossible obstacles became the humans' greatest advantage. Captain Brooks stood calmly on his bridge as asteroid fragments bounced off their reinforced hull. Use the asteroids as shields and battering rams, he ordered his helmsman. These rocks have been floating here for millions of years. Time to put them to work. The human ships moved through the field with a grace that amazed their enemies. Where other species saw deadly hazards, humans saw opportunities. They used the asteroid's gravity wells to slingshot around corners, avoiding enemy fire while positioning themselves for devastating surprise attacks. When a particularly large asteroid drifted between them and an enemy destroyer, the humans simply pushed it forward with their ship's nose, turning it into a massive projectile. The Gulag raiders had expected an easy victory against a small patrol fleet, but they quickly realized these weren't ordinary opponents. The human ships moved in ways that violated every rule of safe space combat, taking risks that would terrify most species. When a Gulag destroyer moved to intercept the Endurance, Brooks made a decision that shocked everyone on his bridge. Wilson, decompress sections 7 through 12 immediately. He ordered with the same calm tone he might use to request coffee. The Regelian medical officer, Dr. Yethelin, turned pale at the command. His species required carefully controlled atmospheric conditions to survive, and the thought of deliberately venting ship sections into space horrified him. Sir, that action will make those areas completely uninhabitable. No one can survive in hard vacuum. Marine Colonel Steve Murphy was already sealing his combat helmet as he prepared for boarding actions. His weathered face showed the confidence of someone who had survived countless dangerous missions. Not for us, he replied. Simply, my Marines are used to working in vacuum. We train for this every day back on Earth. The human ships began their most shocking tactic yet. Instead of avoiding collision with enemy vessels, they deliberately rammed straight through Gulag formations. Their hulls, originally designed to withstand Earth's violent hurricanes, earthquakes, and meteor impacts, proved incredibly effective as weapons themselves. The reinforced construction that kept humans safe during planetary disasters now allowed their ships to survive impacts that would destroy vessels from more peaceful worlds. When the Endurance smashed through the side of a Gulag cruiser, human Marines immediately poured through the breach. They moved through the damaged enemy ship, wearing full environmental suits, completely unaffected by the vacuum and debris that would kill most other species within seconds. Lieutenant Amy Johnson led her squad of Marines through the twisted corridors of the breached Gulag vessel. The enemy ship's artificial gravity was set to 2.3 times Earth normal, a crushing force designed to slow down any boarding parties. Most alien species would be pinned to the floor by such intense gravitational pull, unable to move effectively. But humans had evolved on a world where gravity, weather, and natural disasters constantly tried to kill them. Johnson moved through the heavy gravity field as if it was barely an inconvenience. Remember, team, these corridors weren't built for our bone density and muscle mass, she reminded her Marines over the CUM system. We're naturally stronger and tougher than anything they've got. Move fast, hit hard, and show them what Earthborn warriors can do. The Gulag defenders found themselves facing an enemy that seemed impossible by their understanding of biology. These humans moved through conditions that should have killed them, fought in environments that should have been uninhabitable, and used tactics that should have been suicidal. What the Gulag didn't understand was that humans came from a world where survival meant adapting to constant danger. Every human child learned to deal with situations that would be considered extreme. Emergencies on other worlds. The raiders had expected to fight soft creatures from peaceful planets, but instead found themselves facing warriors who treated their impossible combat environment as just another day at the office. While the main battle raged between the human warships and the Gulag fleet, a different kind of heroism was taking place in the asteroid field. Smaller human rescue craft, designed for emergency operations, began weaving through the deadly maze of floating rocks and enemy fire to reach the trapped civilian transports. Pilot, Officer Mark Thompson gripped the controls of his rescue shuttle as he pushed the small craft to its absolute limits. His ship was barely larger than a city bus, but it was built tough, like everything else humans made. Space debris scraped against his hull with metallic screams that would have terrified most pilots. But Thompson had learned to fly in Earth's asteroid belt where such dangers were routine training exercises. "Control, this is Rescue 7. I've got visual on the first transport ship," Thompson reported into his headset, his voice steady, despite the chaos around him. His small shuttle was diving through a hailstorm of weapons fire that would have instantly vaporized the delicate craft used by most other species. But human rescue shuttles were built with the same philosophy as everything else from Earth. If it couldn't survive a disaster, it wasn't worth building. The first Vortani transport was in terrible condition. Its hull was cracked in dozens of places, and it spun slowly end over end, completely out of control. Most rescue operations would have declared it impossible to approach, but Thompson saw it as just another challenging docking procedure. He matched the transport's rotation perfectly, and used his ship's magnetic clamps to lock onto its hull. Inside the damaged Vortani transport, the situation was desperate. The artificial gravity system had completely failed, leaving hundreds of civilian passengers floating helplessly through the corridors. Many were injured from the initial attack, and the ship's own medical staff was overwhelmed and struggling to help anyone in the zero-gravity conditions. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jennifer Clark and her human medical team had arrived through Thompson's shuttle and immediately began working to stabilize the most critically injured civilians, while the Vortani medical staff floated awkwardly through the corridors, clearly uncomfortable and disoriented without gravity. The human medics moved with fluid efficiency. Dr. Clark pushed herself from wall to wall with practiced ease, carrying medical supplies and reaching patients that the Vortani doctors couldn't even approach. Her team had trained extensively in zero-gravity medicine because Earth's space stations regularly dealt with emergency situations where artificial gravity failed. The Vortani ship's captain, Elder Morthic, watched in amazement as the human medical team worked. His own species had evolved on a world with consistent gravity and stable conditions, so they struggled greatly when their normal environment was disrupted. "How are your people moving so efficiently in this chaos?" he asked Dr. Clark as she floated past him while treating an injured child. Dr. Clark paused in her work, just long enough to offer a reassuring smile. She was applying emergency medical patches to a patient while maintaining perfect position in zero gravity, something that should have been nearly impossible. "We're from a world where earthquakes, hurricanes, volcano eruptions, and meteor impacts happen regularly," she explained simply. "Our planet tries to kill us every single day in dozens of different ways. This situation is actually pretty calm compared to a typical Tuesday on Earth." Meanwhile, across the battle zone, Chief Engineer Tom Wilson and his team had identified another critical problem. The Vortani defensive platform that should have been protecting the medical station was completely offline. Without it, the station would remain vulnerable, even if they defeated the current attackers. Wilson's engineering team approached the massive defensive platform in a small maintenance craft, dodging weapons, fire, and floating debris. When they reached the station's engineering section, they discovered that the main power coupling had been completely destroyed by enemy fire. Most engineers would have declared the platform irreparable without major shipyard facilities, but Wilson's team had learned to improvise solutions using whatever materials they had available. They began rerouting power through secondary systems that weren't designed to handle such loads, bypassing safety protocols that other species considered absolutely necessary. "This shouldn't work according to any engineering manual," Wilson muttered, as he welded together components that were never meant to be connected. But Earth engineers don't worry about what the manual says when people are dying. The improvised repairs violated several basic laws of physics and would have horrified safety inspectors from any civilized world, but they worked anyway. The defensive platform's weapons came back online just as more Gulag reinforcements appeared on long-range sensors. When the smoke cleared and the weapons fell silent, the battlefield told a story that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. Of the 12 Gulag warships that had arrived expecting an easy victory against helpless civilians, only 4 limped away into the darkness of space. 8 of their vessels floated as twisted wreckage among the asteroids, destroyed by an enemy force they had vastly underestimated. The remaining Gulag ships retreated not because they had accomplished their mission, but because they had encountered something they had never faced before. These humans fought with a ferocity and determination that made no sense, according to everything the Gulag understood about warfare. Most species would have calculated the odds, determined the mission was impossible, and withdrawn to preserve their forces. But humans had charged directly into overwhelming enemy fire without hesitation. Inside the rescued Vortani transport ships, hundreds of civilian passengers stared in quiet amazement at their human saviors. Many of them had expected to die in the cold vacuum of space, either from hull breaches or when the Gulag raiders inevitably boarded their vessels to take slaves. Instead, they found themselves looking at beings who had risked everything to save complete strangers. Elder Morden, of the Vortani Collective, was an ancient being who had lived through many conflicts and seen the rise and fall of several galactic civilizations. His species had always believed that self-preservation was the highest law of the universe, that rational beings would always choose their own safety over the welfare of others. But these humans had shattered that belief completely. "You came for us," he whispered to Captain Brooks, his voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "Despite the impossible odds, despite the overwhelming danger to your own people, you came when we called for help." Captain Brooks was helping to carry wounded Vortani civilians from the damaged transports to the human medical ships, his uniform torn and stained from hours of rescue operations. He paused in his work, just long enough to meet the elder's eyes, with a simple, honest expression. "That's what neighbors do," he said quietly. "When someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter how dangerous it is." As news of the battle spread through the galactic communication networks, other species began to understand something profound about these newcomers from the small blue world called Earth. The humans weren't just another species that had managed to survive on a hostile planet. They had learned something from their dangerous homeworld that other species had never grasped. They didn't just survive their hostile environment, they had learned that no situation was too dangerous, no odds too overwhelming, if innocent lives were at stake. Where other species saw impossible missions, humans saw people who needed help. Admiral Patricia Hayes arrived 3 hours later with the Allied relief fleet, expecting to find either a desperate battle in progress or the wreckage of human ships scattered across the asteroid field. Instead, she found the human vessels already conducting repair operations and providing medical aid to the rescued civilians. The Endurance floated calmly among the transport ships, its hull scarred but intact, while human engineers worked to restore full power to the Vortani medical station. Human medics had established temporary hospitals in the cargo bays, treating wounded civilians with the same care they would show their own families. "Status report," Captain Admiral Hayes asked as she boarded the Endurance and found Brooks coordinating the ongoing rescue operations. Brooks looked up from a medical report he was reviewing, his expression calm and professional despite having just fought an impossible battle. "Mission accomplished, Admiral. All civilian transports secured, all passengers rescued, enemy force neutralized with minimal casualties to our forces." Admiral Hayes shook her head in amazement as she looked around at the efficient rescue operations continuing throughout the fleet. She had served alongside humans for several years, but she was still constantly surprised by what they considered normal behavior. "One day, Captain, the rest of the galaxy will learn not to underestimate what humans consider routine rescue operations." The story of the Endurance fleet spread like wildfire through alien communication networks over the following weeks. Other species told and retold the tale of 4 human ships that had defeated 12 enemy vessels to save civilians they had never met. The story grew with each telling, but the core message remained the same. Humanity had earned a reputation, not just as formidable warriors who could win impossible battles, but as the species that would travel any distance and face any danger to protect innocent lives. They were the neighbors who would always answer when someone called for help, regardless of the cost to themselves. In the dark corners of the galaxy, pirates and raiders began to avoid systems where humans were known to patrol. They had learned that attacking civilians might bring down the fury of beings who considered no sacrifice too great to protect the innocent.